Hello, my brothers and sisters in gaming. Welcome back to the channel. As always, I am Jonathan, your host here at QuickBird Gaming, and I thank you for tuning in for another video because I really do appreciate it. You may be looking a little bronze today. I've been spending a lot of time in the sun this week, but that's okay. Any event, we're here to talk about the gaming news from everything that's happened in the last week, from the week of Sunday, June 22nd to Saturday, June 28th, and we've got, as usual, quite a few stories to get into, so let's get started. First up, the Capcom Spotlight was this week, and along with the Capcom covering their games, we got a few bits of information about Resident Evil, and we realized, as this article says, we might have dodged more than zombies here, because according to this PC Games In article from Friday, June 27th, Resident Evil Requiem was almost live service, but Capcom realized we'd hate it. Understatement of the year, I think. And it says down here that the featuring a new protagonist, Grace Ashcroft, the single-player survival game will send players back to the ruins of Raccoon City. However, Resident Evil is almost an online live service game in the vein of Resident Evil Reverse and other disappointments. Yeah, that would have been an enormous mistake. I think given that some of the Resident Evil games that have come out that have been multiplayer have not been received very well, they haven't fared very well, and that Resident Evil really doesn't thrive as an open world concept. It is better off. The games that have been the best success have been the tightly controlled, horrific games. I think going that route would have been a blunder. Let's see. Yeah, you might have seen some rumors, things like an online Resident Evil or an open world Resident Evil, which we spent some time experimenting with, explains director Koshi Nakanishi. However, they decided against either approach. We realized it wasn't what fans wanted to see or play. That was a wise move. This is the article speaking. We can't see an open world Resident Evil working, and Capcom has a poor track record when it comes to multiplayer Resident Evil games. And the article goes on to talk about a couple of the other ones right there. And then it says, the Resident Evil Requiem team also revealed that the game has more in common with Resident Evil 7 than it does with Village. Capcom is making a concerted effort to replicate the former's fear factor, which at the time was just the shot in the arm the series needed. And I could agree more with that. Along those lines, we have this article on the same subject over at Insider Gaming, also from yesterday on Friday. Resident Evil Requiem director says Leon is a bad match for horror. Every fan has been wondering whether Leon Kennedy will be part of the new game. With the director calling a character a bad match for horror, everyone is even more confused. Okay, during the spotlight, players received more information, including why Leon is not a good match. Koshi Nakanishi says they thought about making Leon the protagonist, but it is difficult to make a horror game around a character with an action hero-like personality. He would not get scared like a bucket falling, and no player wants to see a character getting scared by every little thing. So basically they're saying he's too cool for the horror aspect. This is also the reason why Resident Evil Requiem went with a new protagonist this time. Grace Ashcroft, an FBI intelligence analyst, says she is introverted and easily scared, and they wanted developers wanted the character to experience horror from the same perspective as the player. So with Grace Ashcroft, a new character that's taken the reins here, they're saying there won't be Leon in this. Although down here, the rumors say a completely different story. According to the person behind all the Resident Evil Requiem leaks, who goes by the handle of Dusk Golem, Leon is the main character for the upcoming title. Players will not see him for some time, but in the final game, you will, quote, play more as Leon than Grace, according to the Insider. You know, I think this is just going to be grist for the rumor mill, something to give the talking heads to something to talk about as we lead up to this game's launch, which is on February 26th of next year. Me personally, I think Leon's been a great part of this series. I'm not opposed to this new character taking the reins in this series. I don't think it's some kind of DEI initiative. Female characters have been there since the very beginning with the likes of Jill Valentine and Claire Redfield. Resident Evil has had a long history of having strong female protagonists. And when I say strong female protagonists, I don't mean abrasive and men in dresses. I'm just saying that there's precedent for this. This is not an unusual move. I think this will be okay to have this character who starts off very frightened and afraid And then you get to go through her character arc as she learns to handle what's going on here. And it sounds like it's going to be a very horrific experience. I'm looking forward to it. But as to whether or not the rumors are true and Leon is going to be the main character, like I said, it just gives us something to talk about until the game releases. And that's okay too. Now see, with a headline like this, I'm not sure whether to be more irritated or disappointed. This is from Games Radar, also from Friday the 27th of June. Desperate to avoid saying, quote, "We want that 10 billion," League of Legends dev Riot Games tries to justify legalizing esports gambling sponsors, but players aren't buying it. Now, I probably don't even need to read the rest of this article. This headline sums it up pretty well. League of Legends and Valorant developer Riot Games is reversing its long-standing rules on gambling sponsorships for its esports leagues, seemingly in a thinly veiled justification to bring in that sweet, sweet betting revenue. Yesterday, an announcement from John Needham, esports lead across Riot's entire portfolio, made Riot's position clear. We're opening betting sponsorships in esports. And those sponsorships will be available for top-tier League and League of Legends and Valorant teams throughout Americas and the EMEA. Okay. You know, I don't really want to get into Riot's justification in this article. You know, I think it's, like the headline says, it's a very thinly veiled cover for saying we want some of that money. We see all this money that's being bet, and we're not getting a slice, and we want it. Yeah, there's no way around that. Okay, the response from the games community has been swift and unified. There are multiple reasons why players don't want gambling in Legends or Valorant events, ranging from sports betting pervasiveness in traditional sports, concerns about gambling addiction, and how little Riot seems to be addressing that aspect of the partnership, and the fact the company doesn't have the best track record with gambling. The past few years have seen an array of cosmetics make it into its game that can generally only be accessed by brute forcing a significant amount of money through a loot-based system. It was summarized by one of the respondents to Needham's esports post. Riot hasn't handled gambling responsibly for nearly a decade. And I think that's kind of it. Realistically, anytime you introduce gambling to some kind of competitive sports, whether it's esports or otherwise, it always has a corrosive effect, in my opinion. Gambling is going to become more important than the sport. There's always the potential for, what's the word I'm looking for? Bribery, cheating, you know, whatever else you want to call it. I mean, that's been kind of a trope in boxing fiction for years about the boxer who takes a dive because of the odds that are on them. Am I saying that this is going to start happening in competitive esports? I'm not saying it is, but it should be a concern that that's going to happen. And that's to say nothing of all of the encouragement, the subtle endorsement of gambling, which is already something that's highly addictive and a significant problem in society. And no matter what Riot says, the bottom line is they're doing it for the money. There's no way around that, and you don't need to really hear any more from them about it. I personally am glad I don't play competitive sports. I'm almost always completely a single-player video gamer because I just don't see this going anywhere but down. So this is the kind of story that I really do like to cover. These kind of stories just give me a lot of hope in the gaming industry in general. And this is from Monday, June 23rd from IGN. Co-op climbing game Peak takes Steam by storm, reaches the summit of top sellers chart. Peak, a co-op climbing game from the team behind Another Crab's Treasure, is taking Steam by storm, selling 1 million copies in just 6 days. According to Steam's official top-selling games chart, which sorts games by revenue, Peak is ahead of the likes of Dune Awakening, Stellar Blade, and Elder Ring Night Rain, although at a significantly lower price. He had a 100,000 player count yesterday, and then the developers of the game, Aggro Crab, posted, "Why did this stupid jam game sell more copies than Another Crab's Treasure? I'm going to crash out." So they've got a little bit of a sense of humor about this. They spent the weekend working on a patch, including a better lobby, a reminder to sprint when almost out of stamina, as well as addressing a crash on AMD hardware. It was the stupid grass, the team revealed after it rolled out of the fix. We got rid of it. Turns out touching grass is bad. Yeah, I do like these guys. Peak is a co-op climbing game where the slightest mistake can spell your doom. Either solo or as a group of lost nature scouts, your only hope of rescue from a mysterious island is to scale the mountain at its center. And the reason I like these kind of stories is, to me, this is an example of the video game industry doing this right. I mean, you have this small studio that puts out this game. It doesn't have elaborate graphics. You can't see the beads of sweat on the horse's nostrils. It doesn't have big name voice actors. It doesn't have all the bells and whistles that a $100 million plus development game has. Yet the players are embracing it because the gameplay loop gives them something they want. If I go over to Steam database, and I got asked on one of my recent videos by DM why I was not showing the actual game on the Steam database pages. They said, we can't really tell what you're showing. You could be showing us anything. I said, okay, fair point. So this is the peak Steam database, and you can see the charts. They're hitting 100,000 players every night for the last week. 1 million copies sold in 6 days for this studio. That is awesome. And if you go over to the Steam page, they're sitting at a 93% positive review rating, and this game is $8. For $8, Aggro Crab has given players something they can really sink their teeth into. And it doesn't mean it has to be a perpetual success. It doesn't mean everybody's going to keep playing this for months. But they're going to get their money's worth out of it. And they're going to enjoy it. And right now, it's something different. We see games like we saw this year, like Schedule 1. And you see games like last year, like Balatro. Games that are coming from 1 or 2 developers. My Side, was that the name of the horror game that came out last year that had 2 developers? You see these small games that are coming out that they're different, and they're genuine, and they're fun. And sometimes I feel like the AAA industry has forgotten these things. The AAA developers don't give players what they actually want. Yeah, they'll give you something beautiful. They'll give you something impressive and wide and open, but is it any fun? And I think the way people's buying habits are answering that question tells us a lot. And so, I mean, kudos to Aggro Crab. I'm glad they're having this success, and I'm glad people are really enjoying this. To the AAA guys, I would say, man, it's not complicated. Just make games that are fun to play. They don't have to be complex. Just give the players what they want. It really is that easy. You want to know what players don't want? Pretty clearly this game right here, because if you see this article from Video Games Chronicle from Monday, 23rd of June, Mindseye studio Builder Rocket Boy has reportedly started mass layoff proceedings. And you can read this article and get into the nuts and bolts of it, but it basically, they say that because of some of the labor laws in the United Kingdom, that because of the insider has said that because of the consultation time they've asked for with their staff, it indicates they're laying off more than 100 people in Britain. And I mean, this is a game, it says, since the release of Mindseye on June 10th, social media has been flooded with videos of the game's technical issues and bugs. The situation has deteriorated to the extent that PlayStation has been refunding multiple players, a rare occurrence that previously took place during the launch of Cyberpunk 2077. Now, I was unable to find any kind of hard documentation on how much this game cost, and which is not unusual. Most of what we see online about game development cost is speculative, unless the studio comes out and says it up front. A lot of it is speculation, it's rumors, it's leaks from supposed insiders, none of which are easy to verify. I do know that Builder Rocket Boy, it's pretty reliably documented that they did a round of investing last year that was worth $100 million for the studio. Now, they're also working on this game everywhere, which is supposed to be some kind of big MMO. It's unknown how much of it went to that, but this, again, was one round of investment, and they apparently had several before that. The studio has had hundreds of employees, and it's been founded since 2016. All that overhead is chewing through revenue. Glassdoor reviews on the company are terrible, citing a lot of waste and overhead expense that could be avoided. Now, again, you're talking about people who may have left the company and maybe disgruntled, so it's hard to verify. But I think it's safe to say this game had a 9-figure budget. How many people are playing it? Pop over to Steam. 45. It's a game that sunk tens, potentially hundreds of millions of dollars, and nobody cares. It was a failure, a massive failure. And then you look at $8 Peak, which sold 1 million copies in 6 days. This is not complicated, but it seems like they're just not going to get it. What are you going to do? Next up, we have this article from Insider Gaming from Tuesday, June 24th. New concept art from canceled Batman game appears online. In a series of images uncovered from a now-removed ArtStation page, Batman fans have gained another glimpse at Project Sabbath. This was a developing Damian Wayne title at Warner Bros. Montreal, canceled several years ago, but intended as a follow-up to 2015's Batman Arkham Knight. And these were some of the images that were on that ArtStation page that were subsequently saved before they were removed, featuring Damian Wayne, an aged-up Bruce Wayne, an older Killer Croc here, and the Huntress. It says, leaked concept art. Yes, okay. Warner Brothers Games Montreal abandoned Project Sabbath many years ago and pivoted to focus on Gotham Knights, which was a less than stellar delivery, indeed. Over the years, a few leaks have caused concept shots to emerge from Project Sabbath, and it was one rumored that the game would have included the Nemesis system that made Middle-earth Shadow series so popular. So I think basically what we have here is possibly just a missed opportunity. Arkham Knight at the time, because of some of the issues of running on different platforms, was kind of rough, but I think it's since gone on to be a pretty revered part of the Batman series. I know Batman fans would have loved to follow up to it. People who like the Middle-earth series would have loved to follow up with the Nemesis system, yet it just seems like it wasn't meant to be. So, like the Stones say, you can't always get what you want, right? In a bit of sadder news, this article from Eurogamer from Monday, June 23rd, promising Minecraft-like Hytale canceled after 10 years in development. And basically, this Sandbox adventure, Hytale, was canceled after a decade of development, and the creator Hypixel Studios is winding down. Hytale began development in 2015 and was Hypixel's attempt at creating the minigames found on its hugely popular Minecraft server of the same name, which has been visited by more than 18 million visitors since its inception in 2013. I've logged into it and checked it out. Wasn't really for me, but I was aware of it. And they said there was a lot of buzz around this project for a long time, with League of Legends developer Riot Games investing millions prior to acquiring Hypixel in 2020, but now the plug has been pulled. So, yet again, unfortunately, another game that has just been a victim of overly long development cycle, and they just couldn't get over the finish line. So they talk, this is from the statement released from the Hypixel Studios. They talked about look at reducing scope, adjusting timelines, finding new angles to keep moving forward, but these would have meant compromising on what made it special. Wouldn't have been the game we set out to make. So in other words, they are just not going to be able to finish. They looked for new investors too. Riot helped them look for new investors to take over the project, and wasn't interested. But so unfortunately, this game is going to fall by the wayside. Next is this consumer-friendly article from Dual Shockers, which was published on Wednesday, 25 June. FTC says Fortnite must refund over 900,000 transactions. And it says last year, Epic Games was ordered by the Federal Trade Commission to refund a total of 72 million players as part of unwanted Fortnite purchases. Apparently, the watchdogs aren't done, as the FTC has just ordered Epic to refund an even larger amount and has reopened the claims process as well. So in essence, the FTC has said, and they even use the term down here, that Epic employs deceptive billing practices, and that consumers were purchasing things they didn't want. And it says, let's see, the refunds from last year, which we previously reported, comprising over 600,000 payments, totaling more than 72 million. In this new round of refunds, the FTC will send almost 1 million checks and PayPal payments to consumers who filed a valid claim. I assume the FTC is paying out of the fines that Epic had to pay them. Excuse me. In total, the refunds from the FTC that have been issued to consumers related to what the agency calls the deceptive billing practices have amounted to nearly $200 million. Now, I like to see this, and the fact that I like to see this really has nothing to do with Fortnite, or I'm not, a player. I'm neutral on Fortnite. I don't play it. I don't have any feelings for or against it. It also is not, I don't like to see this specifically because of Epic Games. I don't really have a good, warm feeling towards Epic Games. A lot of it has to do with Tim Sweeney. I think he's done some skeevy things in the past, just in my opinion. And he's, I think he's tried to prop himself up as the pro gamer or the pro consumer person. But it's kind of like, in my opinion, it's kind of like the pigs in Animal Farm who want to overthrow the humans and just take their place. I think that's kind of what Tim Sweeney wants to do, say, in regard to Steam and how he, talks about the pricing on Steam. But okay, I'm getting off the beaten path here. Anyway, I think this is a good move by the FTC, the Federal Trade Commission, because I think that things like microtransactions and in-game purchases have become so prevalent and so pervasive that companies are going to start finding ways to make them easier and easier to do. I think the days when you had to enter a separate credit card transaction for every thing you want to charge are probably long behind us now, and they're going to make it very easy, including have things that pop up that will automatically bill you if you have an account with them, pop up right in your face. I just expect this to become a larger problem over time, and it's nice to see that consumer protection agencies are actually doing their job in protecting the consumers against some of these practices. So, I don't know what's going to happen in the future with this, but I like to see this case. And I like to see it happen against one of the big dogs in the industry. They for once are not stomping on the small guy. They went right after one of the top hounds instead. So, I'm not a big fan necessarily of government overreach, but in this case, I think it was warranted, and it was a good thing. I'll finish up with this article from Level Up from Tuesday, June 24th. Man arrested for stealing $10,000 worth of Switch games from public libraries. The suspect is connected in 7 burglaries targeting libraries that led to Nintendo Switch games. Many libraries now offer programs where visitors can try out and even borrow games, a commendable effort that helps promote learning, but not everybody is using the system as intended. A man has been arrested after police say he stole over $10,000 worth of Nintendo Switch games from public libraries across Northern California. The Marin County Sheriff's Office announced that it arrested 45-year-old Oakland native on at least 7 different burglaries of Marin County libraries. I guess if you're going to be a dumbass, don't do it halfway. Go large or go home. And now this guy is doing neither. He's going to go to jail. Alrighty, folks. I am going to call it there. Again, thanks as always for tuning in for another episode of Quick Bird News. Hopefully, maybe you heard a story you hadn't heard before, and it gave you a little information about what's going on out there in the gaming world. As always, if you enjoyed this content, please consider subscribing to the channel, leaving a like on the video. Drop me a comment down below. Tell me what you thought of my coverage. I appreciate all the feedback and the engagement. That helps me out a whole lot. In the meantime, like I said, I'm going to wrap this up now, so I'm going to shuffle off. Thank you again for tuning in. You all go out there, live your best lives, and you all stay gaming.